In this episode of CARPe Diem.
Are Canada's cities age-friendly? As the population of our country ages, are communities adapting to the aging population?
CARPe Diem. Seizing the day for Canadians as we age.
Welcome. Is your city designed to make it easy for you to walk to the grocery store, to take a long walk? An age-friendly city is a critical part of enjoying an independent life. Just like Mrs. McDonald, this week's Zippy Zoomer.
We are back with our Zippy Zoomer. She is almost 95 years old. She's hustling and bustling here in Vancouver, and her name is Mrs. McDonald, and I can barely keep up with you.
We're going to Davie Street, Kins Market.
Kins Market.
And I walk down Broadway, down to Hastings.
Mrs. McDonald? Where does she go? Oh, gotta catch up with her.
I just feel that you need to keep busy, you know, because a lot of my friends have passed away. And if I didn't have my volunteer work, you know, I think I would miss that. Now, this is where I was awarded the Award of Merit.
That's for all of the volunteer hours?
This was for 45 years at VGH.
Wow, that's quite a while.
Yeah, well, actually, it's about 48 now. 22 years at the Cancer Clinic.
Okay.
And about 18 at the VSO, Vancouver Symphony. I still have dinners for my family and cook dinners. And I bake for my sons and I bake for my grandchildren.
We're going to keep baking up a storm here with Mrs. McDonald. If you have a Zoomer to nominate, don't forget to nominate them at zippyzoomer@carpe.ca. These are going to be good.
I know her, and she really does walk everywhere. That's a big part of staying zippy, right?
It certainly is. It certainly, you know, we want to have our communities where people can leave their home and get to the grocery store and get to the dentist and get their hair done just a short walk away. And that's really what we're trying to achieve. And bring back what used to be, you know, the old European villages.
Really, the design of cities before the dominance of the automobile.
Yeah, like our old towns, yeah.
Right, and Wanda, your membership, that's what they want.
Absolutely critical for quality of life, but it's critical for quantity of life too. There's clear research that says if you can't walk 400 meters, you're at much greater risk of death. So congratulations to you for having a walkable city, and good on Miss McDonald over there.
Right?
That is fascinating. I've never heard that before. 400 meters.
Yes.
In urban planning, there's a rule of thumb that people are prepared to walk regardless of age. About, well, I'll go to Imperial, about half a mile. Maybe a little less. So it sounds like about the same.
Interesting.
Well, good. Well, speaking of walking, we're going to take a break, and after that, we're going to ask, are the streets safe to walk across?
Coming up on CARPe Diem.
It's currently at 0. 4 lanes of traffic and 2 streetcar tracks to cross in 16 or 18 seconds.
CARPe Diem. Seizing the day for Canadians as we age.
In this segment, we're talking age-friendly cities. And Wanda, what do CARPe members say?
You know, one of the sad things, Carmen, is that our members often blame themselves for their lack of mobility. They say, gee, I just can't anymore, make it to the store, I can't go for walks. And the tragedy is that they can, they just can't do it without a break. They need a park bench, they need a public washroom, and unfortunately, in far too many places where our members live, those facilities aren't there.
They are in Fort Langley?
Well, in the area of Township of Langley, Fort Langley, it's certainly very walkable. It's an older community. It's probably one of the oldest communities that we have in British Columbia. It was the birthplace of BC, and there's a lot of, so it's the old village. It's the walking to town. We have other communities that were designed and built later in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that kind of went away from that concept and were more car-oriented. And now we're trying to go back to that with our newer planning and our newer developments to ensure that we have an age-friendly lens, that people can walk and have a place to rest and can walk on a safe sidewalk that's wide, allows for mobility, devices like scooters and that sort of thing.
Well, speaking of walking, let's take a look at this, because we asked, are cities built and designed with Zoomers in mind? Something as simple as crossing the street can be an ordeal for some.
When Howard Cable became a CARPe member, he said he had one major complaint. He can't make it across the street from his own downtown condo.
Frustrated mainly because I can't make it. I need lights slower.
The renowned conductor and composer says he doesn't feel safe even with help. So we've made our way here to Queens Quay and Bathurst here on Toronto's waterfront to check out the situation for ourselves. I'm headed across the street, going at a decent pace. How are you, sir? Look at this, guys. 2 seconds, and I finally made it across the street. Now, let's see how Howard does.
Okay, let's go. I know you're not going to make it. And don't you worry, because it's all on film. It's currently at 0.
It's at 0, and you've only made it halfway. Let's get you across the street.
4 lanes of traffic and 2 streetcar tracks to cross in 16 or 18 seconds for a man who is almost 93 years old.
We're going to stay on top of this crossing issue with the city. In the meantime, if you have similar concerns, CARPe would like to hear from you in order to help make all our cities more age-friendly. In Toronto's Liberty Village, I'm Darren Maharaj for Zed News.
So he was only halfway across and the light changed.
Give him an island. That's a good solution because it means that you can provide a safe place and adequate time to do the crossing without having to significantly reduce the amount of through time for vehicles, particularly transit. But yeah, here's the dilemma. You're always trying to do trading off when you're talking about designing the cities and transportation particularly. Think of it from the point of view of transit. They're measuring their system by reliability. That's what people always want. You add a few seconds to every crossing, you're going to lose a lot of time. You're going to have to, as a consequence, delay the service level, and that's going to be expensive. So at what point do you decide you're going to have to allocate more time for pedestrians at the expense of moving vehicles? And what's the permissible amount before you really begin to see delays in your system?
Jack, what do you say to that?
Well, our cities have been built around the automobile and in the past, and now we're trying to correct all those issues. So things like having curb bulges that come out so the crosswalk is shorter. When you have a major thoroughfare, it may be more difficult to have that sort of traffic calming and a shorter crosswalk, where we have to look at things like having the island where someone can rest. But definitely going from a car-oriented community to more pedestrian-friendly is something I think Canadian cities are struggling with. It's one thing. Yeah.
I think there's ageism underlying a lot of the premises here. This idea that car traffic can't afford to wait for people to cross. I really take issue with that. We need to have a city design so that everyone of every age can feel free to go out and walk across their neighborhood. But there's also some good news. I think there's some technology that we can use to help adapt and mitigate perhaps some of the damage to car waits while making sure that older folks feel welcome crossing streets. I've seen, for example, double buttons on street lamps at crossings where there's the regular button that you press to cross and you get a certain amount of time. But if you're somebody who is mobility challenged or frail, you can press another button which gives you extra crossing time to get across that street.
That is such a great idea.
That's a great idea. Let's take a look at what seniors want in an age-friendly community.
An age-friendly community gives me access to senior activities.
I think it's very important to have outdoor space, a place to take grandchildren.
I want the bus stop more in front of the senior center.
Definitely need affordable transportation.
I need affordable and quality senior housing.
I would like to see our elected officials more visible in our community.
I don't want to have to navigate this mysterious healthcare system on my own.
I expect better communication from my health services.
I need a doctor who speaks my language.
It's never too late to change for the better.
So Jack, your city is age-friendly. Did you give the seniors what they wanted?
I think we did. It may not be there right now, but we certainly went through a process over a couple of years where our Seniors Advisory Committee struck a task force to look at how do we make our more age-friendly. Went through a process, we came up with an age-friendly strategy, which was then recognized by the province for our municipality. So pretty proud of that, but it's not over. It takes a long time to put these measures in place. Some of it's retrofitting, which costs money and taxpayers' dollars and budgets and time. Some of it's simple things that we could do right now, and some are the things that we've already been doing. So we've looked at it in 3 phases. What can we do today? What's medium term? And what's long term?
Well, cities are like people, aren't they? Change comes generationally.
It does, it does.
Well, but I would argue that I don't think we have generations to wait. I mean, we know that exercise is so critical, not only to keep people physically healthy, but to keep them mentally healthy. Great that governments are stepping in to do some things, but businesses can also take a role, and I think governments have a role in getting businesses to do things. Things like making their washrooms accessible, and it can be a real challenge if everybody's trying to use the washroom at the Starbucks.
We have a pilot project that's starting where we're going to encourage businesses to become age-friendly, and they'll be recognized for that. So there's a certain criteria they have to check off: washrooms, ramps, accessible doors, making it easier for them to get around in their business, whether it's retail or a service. So we're encouraging businesses to put their age-friendly lens on also.
Well, and one thing that people don't necessarily think about is lineups. I see this a lot where older folks are in line. One of the worst offenders is traveling at the airport, but even just at the grocery store checkout, and the cashier is in a rush and pushing them through. One thing some grocery stores have done is created age-friendly lines so that a cashier is specially trained to deal with older folks and that they are patient and waiting. Plus what that does is it streams out the folks that are there trying to grab their milk and go and not making them wait in line while someone else gets the patience and respect they deserve.
I have a quick question for you. We hear what can happen in a township like Langley. What can happen in a big city?
It's a fascinating contrast. You can do some really significant change, and on the other hand, it may take you far longer than you would ever like because there's so much inertia as systems and cities become bigger.
We're going to just take a short break, but before that, let's hear what you have to say about age-friendly communities.
When I had a hip replacement a few years ago, there's not enough time to get across on what they give you at a standard crosswalk. And I see a lot of elderly people really struggling and sometimes being stranded in the middle of the street because there's just not enough time on those crosswalks.
We're aging well, we're growing older, and the population is moving in the same way. So we need cities that are like that. We need cities with affordable senior housing. We need cities that have lots of events.
CARPe Diem. Seizing the day for Canadians as we age.
Welcome back. We're discussing age-friendly cities. How can we make our outdoor environment more enjoyable? The Township of Langley has an innovative strategy to help seniors stay healthy.
I can feel my waistline again.
Is this too hard?
No, this is easy. This is really easy.
You think you could do the whole circuit?
I think so.
An age-friendly world is one that helps people stay healthy and active even at their oldest ages. And this age-friendly equipment really fits squarely within that world.
Toes push up. There you go.
Oh, hey, I'm being elevated.
Yes, you are. And now just slowly come on down. So you're working your chest and your back.
Yes.
And always make sure your abs stay nice and tight.
Do you know what?
Can I ask what makes this particular equipment age-friendly?
It's very easy to use. There's traction support on the majority of the equipment. It is resistance-based, so that there's no additional weight. You're using your body weight and your natural body movements to use all the equipment.
The age-friendly strategy had a lot of that input, and there were places in there where we as a parks department had to plug in and say, are we going to be doing to meet the objectives of the age-friendly strategy?
Keep going. You can do it.
Jack, that was a brilliant idea.
Yeah. You know, and it's not a new idea. I was recently in Seoul, South Korea, and went for a walk in their parks, and these sorts of outdoor exercise equipment are everywhere. And I saw seniors going and using them, I saw young people using them, and came back to Langley, and our staff were already in the process of installing the one we just saw at the Derrick Doubleday Arboretum. A fantastic way to just include a little bit of other activity other than just walking.
Thinking this is a great example of generational change. Often the vision comes in one decade, the plans come in the next, implementation in the third decade.
But that's an example, isn't it, of how critical it is to invest up front. And we can be sort of frustrated now that communities that were built in the past weren't more age-friendly, but we're continuing to fall short. I mean, we now know that there are things that can be done to buildings, to homes, to make them more age-friendly. Walk-in showers, plugs that are up higher, hallways that are big enough for a wheelchair, which also makes them big enough for a stroller. Big closets built one on top of the other so you can easily retrofit an elevator. But we're not doing that now.
Oh, money. Absolutely. Affordability, resistance, reluctance to change, or the inability to do so within the constraints that you have, whether it's a city budget or what a developer would say is my target market, who can't really afford beyond a certain level.
So, Jack, why aren't you making every single developer put every one of those in every building?
That would be great. We do have minimums. A lot of things are market driven. You see that the developers and the ones that are building homes and selling them, they want to sell those homes. So they see what the market looks for. For example, we've several developments where they've now are building these townhouses. We're master on the main floor. They're very accessible, and there's a huge uptake in that. And so, you know, the development community is addressing that. I know we can do more as a municipality to put in rules and add these things, and we're doing that. It just takes, again, it takes time, and there's some resistance, but some of these things aren't that expensive. Putting in a wider door, moving your plug outlets up a little bit higher are not hard to do.
And what about if there's a consensus? Let's take a moment and meet the residents of Grand Isle, a community in northern BC that became age-friendly. It takes a village.
Here in Grand Isle, being an age-friendly community means we're inclusive. In completing the plan, we involved the seniors, we involved the Red Hat Society, we involved the Curling Club, we involved the fire department, we involved any of the organizations that we have within our community structure themselves, and created an environment in which they could sit down and have dialogue.
I'm on the village council, and I'm with the fire department for the last 9 years as a senior. Oh, definitely. I think socializing is one of the most important things that happen.
The whole outlook of the community has changed. Cooperation is the secret. Cooperation from everyone.
Grand Isle, a community of 300, can do it. Township of Langley, smaller community, can do it. Can a big city do it?
Yes, but again, over time, with community will, political will, and support, perhaps in the face of resistance, often from the very people who will eventually benefit when the change is adapted for them, but when they see a change in their community, might be very reluctant initially.
We see that with community plans where people are saying, hey, we want to have a place that, you know, our house may be too big. We want to downsize to something a little bit smaller. But then we have resistance to something smaller is a higher density housing type, and so we have resistance to that. So there's a balance that we have to come up with, but all those needs have to be met. You're right.
Absolutely. And what about aging in place? That's a big part of it too.
From a financial point of view, it absolutely makes sense. But more importantly, from the standpoint of the individual having quality of life. And when we are in our homes, we have our routines, we have our familiarity, but we also have our networks. We have our friends, we have our professionals and our caregivers that we work with. So the more that we can support people to age in place, the better that those ages will be.
We're going to take another quick break, but let's hear more about what changes you'd like to see in your communities.
I think what's happened with a lot of housing in the past is that you've kind of ghettoized communities of people. You have people with large homes, big backyards, big families, wealthy, they can live there. You have apartments that are considered to be seniors apartments, or 50, 55 plus apartments. You don't have a lot of families there.
seizing the day for Canadians as we age.
It's now time to go around the table for our panel's final thoughts on age-friendly cities. And Gordon, start with you.
I think we now have a better vision and more willingness. Let's acknowledge here that Zoomers now, I think, know better about what their needs are and are more willing to entertain them in their communities in a way that they might have resisted in the past. That's going to make such a difference politically.
We can learn and we can continue to improve, and I think that's what's really important for municipalities, for councils, for those in decision-making positions, to learn from others. And I really do thank CARPe for all the help that they do. They provide us with a lot of input, and it shapes how we plan our communities.
And I think what we need is a bit of a change at our city halls, our community halls, to recognize that our seniors and our older Canadians are just as important as people of other ages. We should make mandatory that no new development or community is built without being age-friendly, and we should allocate the budgets to go ahead and retrofit the communities that are built that aren't. Too many of our members, particularly those living in suburbs, they're fine when they're driving, and then they get to an age where they lose their license and it becomes a sentence of isolation, and we have too many folks who become socially isolated and alone, which is just as physically damaging as somebody who is struggling with morbid obesity or a chronic smoker. We have the ability to make all our cities age-friendly if we have the will.
Wanda, as always, lovely to have you with us. And Gordon and Jack, will you come back and talk more about this? This is so fascinating. So thank you all for being here. And that's the show. And remember, as our CARPe president, Moses Neimer, always says, the best way to keep going is to keep going. So stay zippy and Carpe Diem. Seize your day.